The shuttle shook as it pierced the atmosphere of the uncharted planet. Elias Ward gripped the sides of his seat, not from fear but from anticipation. He had trained for this mission for months, yet the reality of stepping onto a world no human had ever mapped made him feel both small and extraordinary. Beside him, the alien crew adjusted their armor and weapons with practiced ease, their movements fluid, almost predatory. Elias, in his plain human suit, felt like a child in a room of lions. Commander Zarha, the apex predator leader of the team, let out a low, rumbling laugh as she observed him. Her 3 eyes narrowed, the iridescent scales along her jaw catching the dim light of the shuttle. "This human," she hissed to no one in particular, "a trainee on our mission? How amusing!" Her voice had a metallic undertone, each word sharp as a blade. Elias looked down, pretending not to hear, but his ears caught every syllable. The other aliens glanced at him with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. Humans, they said, were fragile. Their bodies were soft, their reactions slow, and their endurance, if it existed at all, was laughable. Yet despite their scorn, Elias felt a spark of excitement. He had heard the rumors, seen the stories in old holo recordings. Humans were underestimated more than any other species in the galaxy, and they always surprised their enemies. The shuttle shuddered as it landed on the planet's surface. Dust and small rocks scattered across the hull as landing thrusters dug into the strange, red soil. The doors hissed open, revealing a landscape that was both mesmerizing and dangerous. Towering crystalline formations rose like jagged mountains, and the air shimmered with a heat that made the horizon seem like it was alive. Even without sensors, Elias could feel the presence of life. The ground itself seemed to pulse with anticipation, as though the planet were watching the newcomers. Zarha stepped out first, her massive claws sinking slightly into the soft soil. She inhaled sharply, sniffing the air. "This place is alive," she said almost to herself. "It is perfect for testing strength or finding weakness." She turned her gaze toward Elias, her expression almost predatory. "And it seems we have plenty of weakness among us." The words were meant to wound, and the human felt the sting, but he held his posture. He had learned early in training that fear and doubt were weapons aliens often used before the fight even began. The team moved out cautiously, each step crunching on the strange ground. Elias followed, careful not to fall behind but refusing to rush. The alien veterans checked every corner, scanning for threats, but Elias noticed patterns the others did not. Footprints that were too large for any known animal, faint claw marks on crystalline rocks, subtle shifts in the vibrations of the ground. To anyone else, they might seem insignificant, but to him, they painted a story of predators that waited in silence, observing from the shadows. Hours passed, and the team made camp near a small crystal grove that reflected the twin suns above. Zarha set up a perimeter with her usual efficiency, clearly amused that the human trainee carried only a small sidearm and a multi-tool. "Do you even understand what danger looks like, human?" she asked, tilting her head. Elias looked at her calmly. "I've seen it," he replied simply, "and I've learned to survive it." The other aliens laughed quietly, the sound like gravel sliding down a cliff. Elias said nothing, letting them have their amusement. In the back of his mind, he catalogued every detail of the planet, the air density, the wind patterns, even the way the shadows shifted under the twin suns. This world was alive, yes, but it could be read, and he intended to read it better than anyone else. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and violet, strange noises began to rise from the forest beyond the crystal grove. Low growls and the snap of branches made the team tense. Zarha's muscles tightened, her eyes darting toward every movement. "I do not like this," she muttered. Elias, however, knelt and traced the footprints in the soil. They were enormous, far bigger than anything in the Coalition's database, and they moved with deliberate purpose, not randomness. "They're cautious," he said softly. "They're testing us, not attacking yet." "I don't need to understand them to survive," he said. "I just need to know enough to avoid being their prey." He had learned to listen to more than sound. He listened to instinct, to intuition, and to the subtle vibrations that the forest sent through the soil. Humans had survived by being patient, by waiting for the right moment to act. Tonight, that patience would be tested. Hours passed with little more than distant noises until a sudden, sharp cry pierced the night. The sound was not from any animal the team had seen before. It was deeper, more intelligent, almost as if it were communicating. Zarha growled, signaling the team to stand. Weapons raised, they scanned the forest, but nothing appeared. "Where is it?" she demanded. Elias pointed to a shadow between two towering crystals. The outline of something massive moved just beyond sight, silent and deliberate. The other aliens froze. Elias, however, simply studied the movement, noting the rhythm, the spacing, and the timing. He whispered, "They know we are here. They are deciding whether to attack." Elias stood slowly, drawing a small device from his pack. It emitted a soft hum and projected a faint pattern of light over the clearing. The predators stopped their advance, the hum interfering with their senses. The other aliens gasped. Zyra's mouth opened as if to scoff, but she paused. Elias did not move. He only waited, watching, learning. "Sometimes," he said quietly, "you don't fight what you can avoid. You survive and the rest follows." "You did nothing while they circled us," Elias nodded. "I did what was necessary to survive. Sometimes doing nothing is the smartest move." Her jaws clicked in thought, a sound of both frustration and grudging respect. The other aliens looked at him differently now, realizing that perhaps the human was not as fragile as they had believed. As the twin suns rose, casting long shadows across the crystal landscape, the team continued deeper into the planet. Elias walked in the middle of the formation, quiet but observant. He cataloged every sound, every shadow, every movement. He noticed subtle signs of life that the aliens missed, from hidden burrows to faint trails of liquid reflecting sunlight. The predators were still out there waiting, but for the first time the team felt that survival might be possible, because Elias was there. Throughout the day, the terrain became more dangerous. Jagged crystal spires formed natural mazes, and the air grew thinner. Several of the aliens struggled, their endurance waning in the heat and gravity. Elias, though not physically stronger, adjusted his breathing, pacing, and movements to conserve energy. When a small predator darted from behind a crystal, the alien soldiers raised their weapons, ready to fire. Elias signaled them to hold. The creature paused, sniffed the air, and backed away. "They test everyone," he said, "but they fear us in ways you cannot see." Zyra clenched her fists, realizing that the humans' subtle understanding of survival was more than instinct, it was strategy. By nightfall, the team made another camp, but the tension remained. The predators had not attacked, yet their presence was felt everywhere. Zyra remained silent for long stretches, watching Elias as he prepared a small perimeter, quietly reinforcing it with traps and sensors that were both simple and clever. He moved with precision, doing more in minutes than some of the aliens could manage in hours. They began to whisper among themselves, realizing that the weak human might actually be their greatest asset. As Elias settled into his rest cycle, he could not shake the feeling that the planet was testing him specifically. The predators were not mindless beasts. They were intelligent, observing, and waiting. And he, human among aliens, was learning not just to survive, but to command respect in ways far subtler than brute force. He closed his eyes, knowing that tomorrow would test them all again, and that the first lessons of survival were only beginning. The following day began under the dim light of the twin suns. The red crystal spires cast long, twisting shadows across the ground, and the air seemed heavier than the day before. Elias Ward moved carefully, scanning the surroundings while the alien soldiers struggled with the uneven terrain. Commander Zyra had taken point, her massive form cutting through the crystal maze with precision. She no longer mocked the human trainee openly, but her sharp gaze followed him constantly, measuring, judging. Elias did not mind. He had learned early that attention, even scrutiny, could be turned into an advantage. The team moved slowly, aware that the predators were still watching. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of stone made the aliens tense. Elias noticed it all, cataloging the patterns. The predators were clever. They didn't attack openly. Instead, they studied, probed, and tested. Their movements left subtle traces on the ground, slight vibrations that a trained human could detect. Elias paused, crouching low, and marked the tracks in his datapad. "They're moving in circles," he said quietly to himself. "They're waiting for a mistake. I listen better when I speak quietly. It helps me notice patterns." The apex predator snorted but said nothing further, choosing instead to keep scanning ahead. The aliens may have doubted his physical abilities, but his keen mind was beginning to show its worth. The day passed in a tense rhythm of movement and observation. Small predator packs appeared now and then, darting between crystals, observing but never striking. The alien soldiers were ready to fire at the first sign of aggression, their muscles coiled and their reflexes sharp. But Elias stayed calm, signaling when to hold fire. "Let them come closer," he said softly. They test strength, but they fear misjudgment. Several aliens exchanged doubtful glances, unsure if patience could outmatch instinctual aggression, but Elia's confidence radiated quietly, unshakable. Around midday, the ground trembled slightly and the team froze. The air itself seemed to hum with anticipation. From the shadows of a massive crystal formation, a predator emerged. It was enormous, taller than Zyrha herself, with spiked scales along its back and eyes that glowed faintly. Its gaze swept over the team, and for a moment the world felt frozen. The alien soldiers tightened their grips, ready to strike, but Elias stepped forward, motioning for silence. "Do not provoke it," he whispered. "Let it judge us first. Understanding does." The human, once ridiculed, had demonstrated a skill they could not match, reading the predator's intent without aggression. By late afternoon, the team reached a narrow canyon, flanked by jagged crystals that rose like blades. The heat was intense, and the air pressure seemed uneven, making each step heavier than the last. The predators had left signs, subtle trails that indicated their patrol paths. Elias studied the patterns carefully. "They move in coordinated routes," he said. "Avoid their main paths and we stay unnoticed." He marked the safe zones with small reflective beacons, barely noticeable but precise enough to guide the team. Zyrha examined them and for the first time said nothing critical. She merely followed the human's guidance. Suddenly, a low growl echoed through the canyon. Elias froze, scanning the shadows. A pack of medium predators emerged, their bodies sleek but dangerous, circling the team cautiously. The aliens immediately raised their weapons, but Elias motioned for calm. "Stand still," he commanded softly. "Do not appear threatening. Let them assess us." The predators stopped at a safe distance, their glowing eyes tracking every movement. One sniffed the air, then tilted its head, hesitating before moving along a different path. The aliens were astonished. Elia's patience and observation had prevented a violent confrontation without a single shot fired. The team pressed forward, deeper into the canyon. Elias kept a steady pace, noting subtle changes in the ground and the shadows. "These creatures are intelligent," he said. "They are not mindless. They respond to respect as much as fear." Zyrha's eyes followed him, her pride bruised but her curiosity piqued. She had been trained to respect strength, yet here was a human teaching lessons in survival and perception rather than brute force. It was a foreign concept, one that unsettled her as much as it fascinated her. As evening approached, the team set up camp near a small crystal formation that reflected the fading sunlight. The air was still, but the presence of the predators was unmistakable. Elias moved among the aliens, checking their positions and reinforcing their perimeter. Small, almost imperceptible sensors were placed around the camp, designed to alert them of even the slightest disturbance. Zyrha watched quietly, noting the humans' efficiency. It was precise, methodical, and unassuming, a stark contrast to the aliens' brute strength and aggressive tactics. During the night, strange sounds rose from the canyon walls. Low rumbles, faint scratching, and the occasional snap of rock made the alien soldiers uneasy. They huddled near the heat sources, weapons at the ready. Elias, however, lay awake, listening and recording the patterns. He understood the sounds not as threats, but as communication, an unspoken dialogue between predators. Each growl, each movement, conveyed information. And humans, he knew, had always thrived by observing and interpreting, not by charging blindly into danger. Hours passed, and the predators tested their patience. One massive shadow approached the camp silently, stopping at the edge of their perimeter. Zyrha tensed, ready to strike, but Elias gestured for calm. Slowly, deliberately, he stepped forward, holding his hands empty, showing no aggression. The predator hesitated, sniffed the air, and then retreated into the darkness. The alien soldiers were stunned. Elias had faced a creature that could have destroyed them all, yet he had not fired a single shot. He had relied on understanding, not violence. The dawn brought clarity. The predators' movements were now predictable, their patrol patterns clear. Elias briefed the team, pointing out the safest routes and the zones to avoid. The aliens listened with growing respect, realizing that their human trainee had not only survived but had thrived where brute force alone would have failed. Zyrha, who had once ridiculed him openly, now observed quietly, her mind racing. Humans, she realized, were different. Not weaker, not slower. They were adaptable, patient, and capable of reading the world in ways that brute strength could not match. As the team prepared to move forward, a sudden tremor shook the canyon floor. Dust fell from the crystal walls, and a deep, resonating growl echoed all around them. The predators were aware of their movement and were closing in, testing them more aggressively. Zyrha raised her claws, ready for a fight. Elias stepped forward, calm as ever. "Stay alert, stay silent, and follow my lead," he instructed. "They are dangerous, yes, but we can survive if we remain patient and deliberate." Every step was measured, every movement calculated. When the predators approached, Elias signaled subtle adjustments in their formation, guiding the team away from danger without engaging. One of the predators lunged suddenly, but Elias anticipated its trajectory, stepping into the shadow and diverting the creature with a minimal motion. The aliens watched in awe. The human's awareness of the environment, the creatures, and even the flow of energy in the canyon allowed him to maneuver in ways they could not comprehend. By mid-morning, the predators had begun to retreat, circling back into the shadows. Zyrha's tail twitched, an unspoken acknowledgement of the human's skill. You are not weak," she admitted quietly, her pride still intact but tinged with respect. Elias offered no reply, simply noting the retreat patterns for future movement. The lesson was clear: strength alone did not define survival. Understanding, patience, and perception could overcome even the most dangerous of enemies. The team continued their exploration, the canyon slowly opening into a vast valley filled with crystalline formations taller than mountains. The predators had tested them, and the humans had survived. The alien soldiers began to murmur among themselves, acknowledging the human trainee with quiet approval. Zyrha, though silent, could not deny it. The human had proven himself in ways that brute force could not measure. And as they moved deeper into the valley, Elias remained vigilant, knowing that the predators' tests were far from over, and that every step forward was another chance to demonstrate the power of patience, intelligence, and human resilience. The valley stretched before them, a sprawling labyrinth of jagged crystal towers that glinted under the twin suns. Elias Ward led the team cautiously, his eyes scanning every shadow, every ripple in the ground. The predators had tested them yesterday, and today they were likely to test them again. But Elias was ready. He understood the rhythm of the world they had entered, the subtle signals that revealed danger long before it struck. The alien soldiers moved behind him, wary and tense. Commander Zyrha's massive form cut a path through the rough terrain, her claws scraping against the crystal floor. Though she no longer mocked Elias openly, her eyes flicked toward him constantly, measuring, assessing, questioning. He had proven his value yesterday, yet the apex predator leader could not fully trust what she could not understand. Humans, after all, were creatures of subtle strength, their power hidden beneath appearances. As they proceeded, a series of low rumbles echoed through the valley. Elias froze, kneeling to examine the ground. The vibrations were different from the usual tremors of the terrain. He traced the patterns with his fingers, reading the subtle shifts like a map. "They are moving in groups," he murmured. "Not alone this time, they are planning something more coordinated." Zyrha's three eyes narrowed. "Show me," she demanded, crouching beside him. Elias pointed out the sequence of prints and broken crystal fragments. "They are not charging blindly. They are testing our reactions, our patience, and our judgment." "And you think a human mind can match the instincts of apex predators?" Elias met her gaze steadily. "Not match. Anticipate. Survival is not always about strength." The apex predator tilted her head, a subtle gesture of begrudging acknowledgement. By midday, the predators made their first move. A massive shadow rose from the valley floor, a creature taller than any alien in the coalition, its spiked scales glinting ominously. Its glowing eyes scanned the team, and the air thickened with tension. The aliens raised their weapons, muscles taut, ready to strike. Elias, however, stepped forward calmly. He adjusted the formation with subtle hand signals, guiding the team into positions that minimized exposure while keeping escape routes open. "Do not provoke it," he instructed quietly. "Let it make the first mistake." Zyrha's tail lashed behind her, a clear sign of both agitation and concern. She looked at Elias, her pride challenged by the human's calm authority. "And you believe this will work?" she asked. Elias nodded. "They fear impulsive moves more than patience. Stay still, stay aware, and they hesitate longer." From the shadows, a smaller predator lunged toward the team, its claws aimed at the closest alien soldier. Instinctively, the aliens fired, but Elias raised a hand. "Wait!" He moved a few steps, intercepting the path with a low hum from a compact device he carried. The energy field it emitted created a subtle barrier, forcing the predator to swerve. The alien soldiers stared in disbelief. One creature with the strength to rip them apart had been diverted by a human and a small, quiet device. The predator regrouped, snarling, and Elias adjusted the formation again. "Do not panic," he said firmly. "Observe, adapt, survive." The team followed his lead, each movement precise, deliberate, and coordinated. Another predator emerged, larger and more menacing, but Elias anticipated its trajectory, guiding the soldiers to positions that reduced risk. By the end of the first hour, the predators had tested the team repeatedly, and each time the human trainee had found a way to neutralize the threat without direct confrontation. Zarha's pride wrestled with reality. She had trained for decades to face apex predators, to respect only those strong enough to challenge her. Yet here was a human, fragile in appearance, calmly commanding the team and controlling encounters with creatures she would have charged head-on. It was frustrating, unfamiliar, and unsettling. She followed silently, eyes never leaving him, trying to understand the logic behind his actions. The battle of patience continued through the afternoon. Elias moved among the team, observing reactions, correcting minor mistakes, and ensuring everyone maintained composure. He was not the strongest, not the fastest, and certainly not the most intimidating, but his mind worked differently. He understood patterns, predicted movements, and used every advantage the terrain and technology could provide. Every predator that lunged, charged, or circled was met with calculated resistance, never reckless aggression. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the valley in streaks of orange and violet, the predators made their final move. The largest of them, a towering figure with jagged scales, emerged from behind a crystal spire. Its eyes glowed brighter and it emitted a low, bone-chilling growl. The aliens tensed, weapons raised, ready for combat. Elias stepped forward, placing himself between the creature and the team. He spoke softly, not in commands but in observation. "It is assessing fear," he said, "not strength." "Show it neither." The aliens exhaled collectively, relief mixing with astonishment. Zarha's jaw tightened. She had witnessed the impossible, a human commanding respect from creatures designed to dominate all others. The night settled over the valley, but the atmosphere was charged with quiet energy. The predators had retreated, but their presence was still felt in the air, in the ground, and in the subtle vibrations that Elias detected instinctively. He moved among the team, checking equipment, reinforcing sensors, and preparing for another night. Zarha observed silently, her respect growing, even as her pride remained cautious. Humans, she realized, possessed a resilience that was different from strength, subtle, patient, and deadly in its own way. Around midnight, a faint movement caught Elia's attention. A pair of predators emerged, smaller than the others but equally cautious. They circled the camp, sniffing the air, testing the defenses. The aliens tensed, but Elias stayed calm. He positioned himself strategically, adjusting sensor fields and light patterns to mislead the creatures. The predators approached, hesitated, and then retreated once again. The team watched in stunned silence. Elias had not raised a weapon once, yet every predator encounter had been controlled, every threat neutralized without violence. The lesson was clear. Humans survived not because of raw power, but because of perception, strategy, and adaptability. By dawn, the predators had fully withdrawn from the immediate area. Elias briefed the team, highlighting safe routes and areas to avoid. The aliens listened intently, their respect for the human growing with each word. Even Zarha, who had once mocked him openly, now studied him with a mixture of curiosity and caution. She had underestimated the human, and she would not make that mistake again. Humans, she realized, were unpredictable, not in recklessness, but in ingenuity. Their strength lay not in muscle, but in mind, patience, and the ability to endure when all others would falter. The team moved forward, deeper into the valley, the jagged crystal spires towering like silent guardians. Elias led steadily, observing patterns, predicting predator movements, and guiding the team with subtle gestures and quiet commands. The alien soldiers followed, sometimes reluctantly, always watching the human with new awareness. Each step reinforced a growing realization. The predators had tested them, but it was Elias' patience and intellect that ensured survival. The human's strength was not visible in the way the aliens expected, but it was undeniable. As they reached the center of the valley, a massive crystalline formation rose like a natural fortress. The air shimmered with energy, and the ground trembled slightly. Elias sensed the presence of the apex predators nearby, waiting, observing. He stopped the team and scanned the environment. "They are close," he said, "and they are evaluating us now. Stay calm, stay aware, and we will survive." Zyra's tail flicked, a subtle acknowledgement of the human's skill. For the first time, she did not question his judgment. She simply followed. The sun set over the valley, casting long shadows across the crystalline towers. The predators were out there, silent and patient, but the team felt a quiet confidence. Elias had led them through the first wave of tests, demonstrating that survival was more than brute force. It was observation, strategy, and patience. The human trainee had not only endured, but had begun to earn the respect of some of the galaxy's most fearsome warriors. And as the night deepened, Elias knew the greatest challenge was still ahead. The apex predators would not stop testing them, and the human mind would be called upon again to navigate danger, anticipate attacks, and guide the team through trials that could destroy them all. Yet he felt ready. Humans survived because they adapted. They endured because they learned. And in this alien world, amidst creatures that could crush them with a single strike, Elias Ward was about to prove that human ingenuity was as dangerous as any weapon. The morning light filtered through the jagged crystal towers, painting the valley in sharp, brilliant streaks. Elias Ward rose early, as he always did, his senses alert to every detail. The subtle vibrations of the ground, the movement of shadows, and the faint signs of predators nearby. The team moved cautiously, following his guidance. The predators had tested them before, but today, Elias sensed something different. Their approach was deliberate, almost calculated, as if the apex predators were no longer merely observing, they were studying them. The alien soldiers shuffled behind him, weapons ready, yet hesitant. Commander Zyra's eyes followed Elias constantly. She had watched the human handle multiple predator encounters without firing a single shot. She had seen him anticipate attacks, redirect danger, and command respect from creatures designed to dominate all others. She could no longer dismiss him as weak. And yet there was a tension in her pride. Humans did not rely on brute strength, and that unpredictability unsettled her. As they moved deeper into the valley, the crystal towers grew taller and closer together, forming natural corridors. The predators' tracks were everywhere, some fresh, some older. Elias knelt to examine a set of massive footprints. "They've increased in number," he said quietly. "They're testing coordination now." "Watch the patterns." Zyra crouched beside him, studying the tracks with her sharp eyes. "And you trust that a human mind can keep pace with creatures like these?" she asked softly. Elias straightened, his gaze unwavering. "Not just keep pace, predict, anticipate, outlast." A massive shadow appeared at the edge of a crystal ridge, its form towering and menacing. Smaller predators flanked it, moving with surprising coordination. The alien soldiers tensed, ready to strike. Elias raised his hand, signaling them to hold. "Observe first," he whispered. "Strength alone will not save you here. Understanding will." He adjusted sensors, light reflections, and sound fields with small gestures and devices. Every predator that lunged or circled found itself subtly diverted, guided away without the team needing to fire a single shot. The aliens could barely comprehend it, yet they followed his lead, trusting his judgment because the results were undeniable. Hours passed with repeated encounters. Every predator approach was met with calculated resistance. Elias directed the team with quiet authority, making minor adjustments to formation, signaling shifts in position, and predicting predator movements. One massive creature charged suddenly, its claws aiming for Zyra herself. Elias stepped into the path, holding a small device that emitted a low-frequency hum. The predator swerved mid-strike, confused by the energy interference, and retreated. The alien commander's jaw tightened in disbelief. The human had controlled a life-threatening attack without aggression, relying solely on observation, intuition, and subtle technology. By afternoon, the team reached a massive crystalline plateau. The predators' patrols had become more aggressive, their movements deliberate and coordinated. Elias paused, scanning the area. He noticed a pattern. The predators had a rhythm, a cycle of approach and retreat. "They are evaluating endurance now," he explained. "Not just strength. They are measuring patience, persistence, and adaptability. Those who panic or rush will fail." The alien soldiers exchanged glances, slowly beginning to understand. Humans survived by enduring, by calculating risk, and by knowing when to act and when not to act. Suddenly, a loud roar echoed across the plateau. The largest apex predator yet appeared, its body gleaming with jagged scales and immense muscle. It circled the team, testing reactions. The alien soldiers raised their weapons instinctively, but Elias moved quickly to adjust the formation, directing them to positions that minimized exposure while maximizing their ability to respond. "Do not react with fear," he said firmly. "React with observation. They test hesitation more than strength." Elias anticipated its path, signaling a minor shift in position. The creature collided with a reflective energy field he had deployed moments earlier, diverted harmlessly off course. The aliens stared, astonished. The human had predicted its movement, using the environment and minimal technology to neutralize the threat without a direct fight. Zarha's pride strained against reality. She had underestimated the human's ability to command respect from creatures that had terrorized entire worlds. The encounter repeated several times. The predator and its companions tested the team's reactions in a series of deliberate strikes. Each time, Elias anticipated the moves, adjusted formations, and guided the team to safety. The alien soldiers began to whisper in quiet awe. He predicts them," one muttered. "It's impossible." Another nodded, realizing the truth. Human ingenuity was not just clever, it was effective. Patience, observation, and subtle strategy could outmatch brute force when applied correctly. As evening approached, Elias gathered the team near a massive crystal outcrop. The predators had ceased direct attacks but lingered in the shadows, their presence undeniable. He spoke calmly, outlining the observed patterns, safe routes, and areas to avoid. "They test, but they also respect," he explained. "We have proven ourselves capable of surviving. That alone changes their behavior. Strength does not earn respect here. Endurance and understanding do." Their power lay not in intimidation, but in resilience and intelligence. And now, faced with predators that had dominated entire worlds, humans could command respect without a single act of violence. Night fell across the plateau, and the predators' presence became more subdued but still palpable. Elias moved quietly, adjusting sensors and monitoring the team. He observed faint movements, subtle vibrations, and the shadows cast by the crystal towers. Everything was connected, and he was attuned to it. The apex predators were intelligent, persistent, and dangerous, but they were predictable when their instincts and patterns were studied. Humans had survived because they could perceive and adapt, and tonight they had proven it once again. Around midnight, Elias noticed movement at the edge of the plateau. A trio of predators emerged, smaller than the largest one but equally careful. They circled, sniffing the air, assessing, testing. The alien soldiers tensed, but Elias remained calm. He adjusted sensors and subtle reflective markers, diverting the predators' attention without confrontation. The creatures approached, hesitated, and then retreated. Again, no weapons were fired, yet the humans had survived another direct test from the apex predators. Zarha studied him in silence. The human had done what her soldiers could not. He had faced creatures that could kill them instantly, and he had done so with patience, intelligence, and calm authority. The realization struck her fully now. Human ingenuity was more than a survival skill. It was a weapon in itself. The apex predators were wary not of strength, but of perception, adaptability, and persistence. Humans possessed these traits in abundance, and it made them far more dangerous than anyone had anticipated. By dawn, the predators had retreated further into the valley, their presence still detectable but no longer immediately threatening. Elias briefed the team, reinforcing observations, patterns, and safe paths. The alien soldiers listened intently, their respect for the human trainee growing with every word. Even Zarha, whose pride had been challenged, nodded subtly. She could no longer doubt it. The human had proven the value of endurance, intelligence, and patience in the face of overwhelming danger. The team moved cautiously onward, deeper into the valley. The jagged crystal formations rose like silent guardians, and the air shimmered with subtle energy. The predators had tested them repeatedly, and each test had been met with strategy, observation, and calm judgment. The human strength was quiet but undeniable. They had earned respect in a way that brute force could never achieve. As the twin suns set, painting the crystalline towers in hues of orange and violet, Elias paused to survey the valley. The predators were still there, hidden in the shadows, but they had learned caution. The team had survived their most dangerous challenges yet. The human trainee had not only endured, he had begun to change the predators' behavior through sheer presence, intelligence, and patience. Zarha followed his gaze silently, her pride mingled with awe. She had ridiculed the human, dismissed his abilities, and underestimated his endurance. Now she saw clearly, humans survived because they adapted, endured, and observed. Strength was not always visible in muscle or claws. Sometimes it was quiet, patient, and deliberate. Elias turned back to the team. "Tomorrow," he said softly, "we move further into the valley. The predators will continue their tests, but we are ready. Patience and awareness are our greatest weapons. Remember, they respect those who endure, not those who strike first." The alien soldiers exchanged glances, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and newfound respect. As night fell over the valley, Elias lay quietly, alert to every subtle vibration, every shadow, every whisper of movement. The apex predators would not relent, but the humans had shown that survival was not about brute force. It was about intelligence, patience, and adaptation. And in the coming trials, those qualities would prove more powerful than anyone had ever imagined. The valley was quiet at dawn, the twin suns casting long, shimmering reflections across the jagged crystal towers. Elia's ward moved at the front, calm and alert. The predators had tested them repeatedly, yet the humans and aliens had survived every encounter. Today, Elias knew, would be the final challenge. The apex predators were still watching from the shadows, intelligent, patient, and deadly. But he also knew something else. They had learned caution, and humans had earned respect in ways the predators could not ignore. The alien soldiers followed closely behind him. Commander Zyrha led the middle, her massive claws digging into the crystalline ground. She had stopped mocking Elias long ago, and now her eyes were wide with cautious respect. Even the others who had doubted him were beginning to see the truth. Humans were different, not in raw strength, not in speed, but in perception, endurance, and cunning. The human trainee was no longer weak. He was the key to surviving this valley. The predators emerged first. Massive forms slipped silently from between the towers, their glowing eyes scanning the team. Elias raised his hand, signaling for calm. "Do not react aggressively," he instructed. "They are intelligent. They will test our resolve, not just our reflexes." The largest predator stepped forward, its spiked scales glinting in the sunlight, followed by a pack of smaller but still imposing creatures. Their growls reverberated across the valley, a warning of danger and authority. Elias studied them carefully. The predators were coordinating, assessing positions, measuring reactions. He moved deliberately, adjusting the team's formation to maximize safety while minimizing perceived threat. Small energy devices, carefully deployed, created subtle barriers and reflective fields that guided the predators' movements without direct confrontation. The alien soldiers watched in amazement. A single human was controlling the battlefield without firing a single weapon, relying entirely on awareness, strategy, and timing. The largest predator lunged suddenly, faster than any creature Elias had yet observed. Instinctively, the aliens raised their weapons. Elias did not flinch. He anticipated the strike, signaling the team to shift slightly. The predator collided with a reflective field, diverted harmlessly, while smaller predators hesitated mid-attack, confused by subtle energy pulses. One of the alien soldiers whispered in disbelief. "How is he doing this?" Zyrha's eyes, normally fierce and unyielding, widened in realization. Elia's calm, calculated approach had neutralized the immediate danger, and the predators' behavior began to change. They were cautious, wary, and even hesitant. Hours passed in a tense dance. The predators tested them repeatedly, advancing and retreating in patterns that Elias had already predicted. Each time, he adjusted formations, deployed subtle devices, and guided the team safely. The alien soldiers began to murmur among themselves, recognizing that brute strength alone could not have kept them alive. Humans survived through patience, perception, and relentless adaptability. They endured, they calculated, they survived. And in the eyes of the apex predators, that endurance was becoming undeniable. By midday, the predators paused. The largest creature observed Elias directly, its glowing eyes studying the human's every move. Elias stepped forward slightly, not in aggression but in quiet confidence. He met the creature's gaze steadily. The predator's instincts reacted. The human displayed no fear, no hesitation, no impulsive movement. The creature stepped back slightly, a subtle acknowledgement that it recognized strength differently than it had expected. Zyrha's jaw tightened. She understood now. The human's presence alone commanded a level of respect that no weapon or muscle could replicate. The team pressed forward slowly, deeper into the valley. Elias continued to guide them, analyzing every step, anticipating every predator movement. Smaller predators darted in from the shadows, testing the group's reactions, but each was diverted or neutralized without violence. The alien soldiers, once skeptical, were now silently awed. Humans were not weak, and their intelligence and patience were a force the apex predators could not ignore. As the sun reached its zenith, the final test approached. The largest predator and its immediate companions blocked the path forward. They moved deliberately, coordinating silently, a wall of power and instinct. The alien soldiers tensed, ready for combat. Elias raised his hand. "Do not strike," he commanded quietly. "Respect earns what aggression cannot. Show them we are not prey." He stepped forward slowly, deliberately, maintaining eye contact with the largest predator. The creature lunged once, a warning rather than an attack. Elias remained calm, shifting slightly, his movements minimal yet precise. The predator froze, sniffed the air, and then stepped back again. A pattern emerged. It was testing endurance, not strength, respect, not dominance. Each movement from the human demonstrated control, awareness, and patience. The predators hesitated, then retreated further, their advance slowing to cautious circles around the team. Zyrha's tail flicked nervously, a subtle signal of both pride and disbelief. She had underestimated humans. Elia's presence, his calm authority, and his understanding of the predators had shifted the balance. Strength was no longer measured by claws or muscle. It was measured by intelligence, observation, and patience. Humans had survived where the apex predators expected to dominate, and now they had earned respect. By late afternoon, the predators had fully retreated, circling at a safe distance but no longer testing them aggressively. The alien soldiers breathed in relief, their admiration for Elias unspoken but palpable. Zyrha approached the human trainee quietly. "You survived every test," she said softly, her voice a mixture of awe and respect. "And they respected you." "How is this possible?" Elias smiled faintly. "We survive by learning, observing, and adapting. Patience is our strength. Strength is not always physical." They survived even when the odds seemed insurmountable. And the apex predators, creatures designed to dominate all others, had acknowledged it. As the twin suns began to set, painting the valley in deep oranges and purples, Elias gathered the team near a high crystal ridge overlooking the terrain they had traversed. He spoke quietly, reinforcing the lessons of patience, observation, and endurance. "Today, we survived because we understood our enemies. We survived because we respected the environment, ourselves, and each other. And in doing so, we earned respect, not by fighting but by enduring." Strength alone would never have saved them. Only strategy, awareness, and human resilience had carried them through. Even Zyrha, once the harshest critic, remained silent, her respect evident in her careful, deliberate nods. As night fell fully, the predators had vanished into the valley's shadows. The humans and aliens set up camp one last time, weary but alive. Elias checked sensors and formations, ensuring safety, then paused to gaze across the valley. The predators had been taught caution, patience, and respect, not through violence, but through endurance and understanding. The human mind had triumphed where claws and muscle alone could not. Zyrha approached, her massive claws making soft impressions in the crystal ground. She looked at Elias and said quietly, "You have changed my understanding. Humans are not prey, they are something else entirely." Elias nodded. "We survive by adapting, by learning, by observing. Strength is not always visible, but it exists where it is needed most." For the first time, she recognized that humans were not to be underestimated. They endured, they survived, and they commanded respect without ever raising a weapon. The team began their journey back through the valley, predators now entirely absent, the air calm, the terrain familiar. Elias led steadily, aware that every step was a reminder of the lessons learned. Patience over impulsiveness, observation over recklessness, endurance over brute strength. The humans had survived and in doing so had proven a truth the galaxy often overlooked. Strength was more than muscle. It was intelligence, adaptability, and the relentless will to survive. As the night deepened, Elias looked at the alien soldiers around him. He saw their awe, their growing respect, and the quiet understanding that humans were capable of far more than appearances suggested. Even Zyrha, the apex predator who had once ridiculed him, now regarded him with genuine recognition. They had faced creatures designed to dominate, to destroy, and yet humans had endured. They had survived. The twin moons rose, casting soft silver light over the crystal towers. Elias knew this would not be the last test in the galaxy, but he also knew that humans, with patience, awareness, and resilience, could survive anything. The apex predators had backed away, not in fear alone, but in acknowledgement. Humanity had earned respect. Humanity had endured. and humanity had triumphed without striking a single unnecessary blow. And as the team prepared to leave the valley, Elia's ward felt a quiet pride. The predators had tested them, the aliens had doubted them, and the challenges had seemed insurmountable. Yet through observation, patience, and human ingenuity, they had not only survived, they had claimed their place as equals, respected even by the deadliest creatures in the galaxy. The valley fell silent behind them, the predators watching from the shadows, the echoes of their roars now distant memories. Elias led the way forward, calm, steady, and unshakable. Humanity had endured. Humanity had survived. And humanity had won, not with claws or weapons, but with intelligence, patience, and the relentless determination that defined their species.